As America enters its second century, industry is growing by leaps and bounds. But with growth have come new problems. Railroads, steel, and oil industries are creating vast fortunes. There is growing resentment against monopoly. There is increasing protest that too much of the wealth and power of the country is consolidating itself in a handful of people. Who are these new kings of industry? And how do they get their power? With the outbreak of the Civil War, railroads become more and more important to win the war and to unite the nation. In 1862, Abraham Lincoln signs the bill authorizing the first Transcontinental Railroad. In the far west, the Central Pacific Railroad is controlled by four men: Leland Stanford, Charles Crocker, Collis Huntington, and Mark Hopkins. When they meet, they are small Sacramento grocery and hardware merchants. They first joined forces with the modest ambition of monopolizing the trade of the local mining camps. When they contract to build the western link of the first Transcontinental Railroad, the government gives them 10 to 20 square miles of public land, plus loans of thousands of dollars for every mile of track the railroad completes. Much of this land will be valuable for future farming and for ranching. There will be important timber and mineral rights. With this immense potential wealth as an inducement, the four promoters find it easy to attract other investors. Risking comparatively little money of their own, they're able to sell large blocks of stock and still retain control of a tremendous empire. And once the Transcontinental Railroad is completed, once the Central Pacific joins up with the Union Pacific, the Big Four, as they are now called, dominate the most important means of transportation in the far western states. Farmers in California must ship their crops east by Central Pacific or not ship at all. The railroad has an absolute monopoly and sets its own rates. It is now pictured as an octopus with a stranglehold on the people of California. Through its enormous financial power, it is able to control some members of the California legislature. It is a time of bribery, corruption, and ruthless business methods. Meanwhile, to do the actual building of its section of the first Transcontinental Railroad, the Union Pacific hires a contracting company called the Credit Mobilier. But this company is secretly owned by the largest and most important Union Pacific stockholders. It is a company set up to defraud the small Union Pacific stockholders. The Credit Mobilier performs $50 million of actual construction and charges $73 million. To forestall a federal investigation, stock of the Credit Mobilier is given to congressmen and high officials in President Grant's administration. The Vice President of the United States, Schuyler Colfax, is among those who accept the stock. A national scandal results. Yet if there are schemers and scoundrels, there are also men of genuine vision who love the country and build for the future. In the Pacific Northwest, such a man is James J. Hill. He gets control of a small railroad and expands it into the Great Northern and builds a railroad empire without any subsidy from the federal government. Interested in developing the Pacific Northwest, Hill sends his agents to Europe to advertise for German and Scandinavian farmers. The Scandinavians help build the lumber industry of the Northwest. Then Hill's railroad brings the cut lumber to Kansas and Nebraska, where it is sold at low prices to encourage the building of fine farms and silos. To improve livestock, he imports the finest cattle, animals that combine qualities for both beef and milk production, and then offers a free cattle breeding service to the farmers. To further help the farmers in his region, Hill sends agricultural experts abroad who bring back strains of wheat suitable for the short growing season of the Northwest. Wheat farming in the Northwest booms. But while new railroads are being built in the West, older railroads in the East are in trouble. 14 different railroads compete for freight and passenger traffic from New York to Chicago. There simply is not enough business for all. In 1869, Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt sets out to combine the best of the routes and to consolidate the weak lines into one strong and efficient system, the New York Central. To get control of the railroad routes between New York and Chicago, Vanderbilt engages in a financial war with unscrupulous promoters, Daniel Drew, Jay Gould, and Jim Fisk, who control the competing Erie Railroad system. Fisk is known as the Barnum of Wall Street. He is called first in the pockets of his countrymen. Vanderbilt attempts to purchase a majority control of the Erie Railroad. But while Vanderbilt's agents in Wall Street are buying up millions of dollars worth of Erie stock, Fisk, Gould, and Drew simply keep the presses busy printing up more and more fake Erie stock. When the scheme is discovered, the conspirators hide from the police and then flee in a ferry boat to the Jersey side of the Hudson River, where the New York police cannot arrest them. The fight for control of the Erie becomes a war which lasts for years. Speculators are ruined. The railroad goes bankrupt and never recovers. Vanderbilt gives up the fight in disgust. But already, Cornelius Vanderbilt has seen that efficient operation of the railroads requires unification of lines offering similar rates and services. The process of combination and consolidation is soon taking place in other overlapping and inefficient rail systems throughout the country. Combination can be an escape from destructive competition. Consolidation can be a means of growth, but they can also be a ruthless method of strangling competition and creating a monopoly. The process of combination takes one form in the oil industry, another in the steel industry. By 1875, Andrew Carnegie is entering the steel industry. The rise of Andrew Carnegie is an authentic rags to riches success story. The son of a poor Scotch weaver, at the age of 12, he comes to America. His first job in a mill like this pays him $1.20 a week. But young Carnegie is bright and studious and determined to advance himself. By the time he is 18, he has become secretary to the head of the Pennsylvania Railroad. His salary has risen to $420 a year. And already, he is looking for investment opportunities. He first organizes a company to make iron railroad bridges. Then, convinced that steel is the metal of the future, Carnegie builds his first steel mill in Pittsburgh. Within a year, this single mill is turning out more steel than all the other steel mills in America put together. Carnegie's career seems to be living proof that opportunity in America is boundless. He is constantly urging others to follow his example. If any of you have as much as $50 or $100, I do not know of any business into which you cannot plunge at once and be successful. Year after year, the Carnegie steel empire grows. He adds railroad lines, iron ore mines, ore boats to deliver ore from a newly discovered Mesabi Range to his mills. He controls vast supplies of coal and coke. In steel, the Carnegie combination is a giant, able to manufacture everything from the raw pig iron to the finished steel products. When he finally sells out to the banking firm of Jpmorgan, the former boy weaver asks and receives a price of almost $500 million. And then, as vigorously as he had labored to make his fortune, Carnegie now works to give it away. Andrew Carnegie spends the last 18 years of his life establishing free libraries and making other important contributions to philanthropy. The process of consolidation and combination is at work in almost every important American industry. But it is in the oil industry that combination takes on a dangerous new form. Oil has been discovered in western Pennsylvania by Colonel Drake in 1859. By 1870, men are becoming rich. The oil business is a dizzy spiral. Boom towns spring up and disappear overnight. Each new well that comes in tries to undersell all the others. With inadequate storage and refining facilities, the oil frequently just spills over onto the ground. A 23-year-old Cleveland produce merchant enters the picture. John D. Rockefeller decides that control of the oil industry lies in refining, which is incompetently carried out and excessively wasteful. Rockefeller finds this waste sinful. He has been raised by a God-fearing mother who instilled in him the idea that willful waste makes woeful want. As a boy, Rockefeller has been taught to save. When he finds an egg a hen has hidden, he is permitted to keep the money. Later, he is given his own chickens to raise. By the time the boy is 10, he has saved $50, which he is able to loan a farmer at 7% interest. He makes the discovery that capital makes money more easily than muscle does. Rockefeller sees his fortune in the oil business. To control the market, Rockefeller's company, Standard Oil, enters into an arrangement with other important refiners and signs a secret agreement with the railroads, promising them large and regular oil shipments. But in return, the members of Rockefeller's group receive a rebate, a secret refund on all the oil they ship. And in addition, they also receive a rebate on all the oil their competitors ship. Moreover, the railroads agree to supply the Rockefeller Group with secret information on all their competitors' shipments, where their competitors are shipping, to whom they are shipping, and the total amount of each shipment. Against secret information like this, no one can compete. Ruthlessly and remorselessly, Rockefeller drives his competitors to the wall. Within a year, Standard is able to buy up 21 of the 26 competing refineries in the Cleveland area. In 1870, Rockefeller's company controls only 10% of the refined petroleum in the country. By 1880, Standard controls over 90%. Soon it is selling its oil in the four corners of the world. No order is too small, no place too distant. To save money, it builds its own barrels. It becomes the most efficient business organization the world has ever known. And as the Rockefeller empire grows, it goes far beyond refining. It begins to produce its own oil, begins to acquire its own oil fields. Soon it begins to own its own railroads, builds its own pipelines, ships in a fleet of its own steamers. Soon Rockefeller is called the king of combinations and is becoming one of the richest men in the world. To avoid laws against monopoly, Standard absorbs some of its former competitors with a new legal device called a trust. Stockholders in merged companies exchange their holdings for shares of Standard. The stock is still owned by the stockholders, but it is surrendered, is entrusted to the nine-man Rockefeller-dominated Standard Oil Board of Trustees. Rockefeller and his group control and run all the merged companies in one operation, thus eliminating competition. The oil trust is widely admired by other industries and is soon copied by a copper trust, an iron trust, a sugar trust, a tin trust. And behind this multiplying of trusts and combinations is the growing financial power of the great banking houses of Wall Street, which some newspapers are beginning to call the money trust. The formation of combinations and trust requires tremendous financing. And the inventor, whose ideas help create new industries, must also turn to the great financiers. In Menlo Park, Thomas Alva Edison is methodically turning out inventions to order. 1877, the talking machine. 1878, the incandescent lamp. 1893, the first motion picture machine, the kinetoscope. One invention after the other. More patents than are ever granted to one man in all history. 1,093 patents. But to make his incandescent light useful, Edison must perfect not only the bulb, he must also work out a dynamo to supply the electric current. Figure out a safe way to send the dangerous current over wires. And finally, he must set up a plant to manufacture the light bulbs at a reasonable price. To supply a single American customer with electric light means creating a complete new industry. And this takes tremendous financing. More and more, important inventors must turn to bankers and financiers. The banking house of Jpmorgan helps create General Electric, the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, International Harvester, Western Union. The House of Morgan provides the financing for many of the railroads. Morgan's banking house is the financial power behind the formation of many of the trusts. Morgan calls the tune for some of the most important industrial interests of the country. He is pictured as having more power than kings. When Jpmorgan proudly says, "America is good enough for me," William Jennings Bryan wryly replies, "Whenever he doesn't like it, he can give it back to us." A proud, imperious man, Jpmorgan is confident that he, personally, knows what is best for America. He says, "If it is good business for the country to do it, I do it." And Morgan firmly believes that what is best for America is combination. Questioned by a congressional committee whether he prefers combination or free competition, the banker replies, "I would rather have combination. I do not object to competition either. I like a little competition." But if Morgan likes a little competition, the Rockefellers prefer none at all. John D. Rockefeller Jr. says, "The American beauty rose can be produced in all its splendor only by sacrificing the early buds that grow around it." Never a man to waste even words, John D. Rockefeller sums up the uncompromising attitude of most of the industrial giants. It had to come. The day of the combination is here to stay. Individualism has gone, never to return. Public reaction to the trusts and to the industrial giants is confused. On the one hand, the trusts fulfill American yearnings for bigness and boldness. When a man like Jpmorgan is pictured as being bigger and more powerful than Uncle Sam, is he not to be admired? To some, the industrial giants are the new American heroes who reflect the Horatio Alger virtue, men who've made good by pluck and luck. They seem to show that it is possible to go from being a poor boy to someone like Rockefeller, one of the richest men in the world. But as the power of the industrial giants and the trusts grows, public resentment gathers. Farmers, finding their livelihood threatened by the power of the railroads to set rates, begin to protest, begin to organize into granges. The American working man finds he can no longer take his problems to an employer who knows him personally. To the industrial giants, who sit in offices frequently thousands of miles from their plants, labor is just another pawn in a game whose goal is the greatest profit. Andrew Carnegie says, "Those who are most successful in the acquisition of property are the very men who are able to handle it in the way most useful to society." The industrial giants believe they alone have the right to set wages and determine hours. When working men join unions and strike against long hours and pay cuts, the industrial giants shut down the plants or bring in strike breakers. Strikes against the railroads, against the Pullman Company, against Andrew Carnegie's own Homestead Steel Company, against mining companies become increasingly bloody and violent. As unrest mounts, as dissatisfaction increases, the cry of monopoly is heard more and more frequently. It is felt that the old free America, where few were very rich and few very poor, is turning into the land of the trusts. As America enters the 20th century, the industrial giants are riding high, and there is a growing feeling that the common people are being crushed under the weight of the trusts. there is a desperate feeling that something must be done to restore a fairer system of checks and balances.